Okay, so listeners, viewers, welcome back to the next episode of the podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Nathan today. Nathan, you're doing some really awesome stuff on Substack, beyond Substack, in the writing world, just all over the place. You've got a massive audience online. I'm really interested to chat to you today. How are things?
Good. I appreciate you having me on, David. I've been looking forward to this.
Brilliant. Nathan, just in case anybody doesn't know who you are straight away, tell us a little bit about yourself. So, where are you based? What are you working on? What does life look like for you? Go for it.
Yeah, I think probably the interesting place to start. In 2021, so 4 or 5 years ago now, I I was working in consulting after university, as you guys say, and quit my job to move to Spain because my wife wanted to get her MBA there, and that was very challenging to see the bank account just like take a straight nosedive. I had to figure out how to, get that turned around, and make some money because believe it or not, even Spain, you got to pay for things. Things are expensive. And I'd always wanted to write. Like I've loved writing my entire life. I wrote a book when I was 11. Turned out I just plagiarized Aragon, and my mom told me I could never show it to anybody. And yeah, good times. So I'd always loved writing, but in school I did engineering. Um, but I decided that was a good time to just go for it. I'd started writing on Twitter a little bit before we moved and just doubled down there and got a gig working at just an agency that did ghostwriting for Twitter. And I made like $2,000 a month doing that. And then I did that for call it 3 or 4 months. And I realized, oh, I can just run my own agency and do this. So I started that business, which ended up doing pretty well. And so at the same time started, I ran a sports newsletter at first. That died. And then I switched to what I really care about, which is storytelling and writing and talking about that. And that one's grown to about 100, call it probably 100,000 active subscribers. There's technically 112 on there, and I just need to probably get rid of about 10,000 of them.
Mm.
Just haven't done that. And that's taken about 4 years to build it up to that base. And just, as you know, it's a lot of work goes into all that.
Nice, amazing. Um, yeah, I mean, you kind of almost just brushed over it, but like 100,000 subscribers is incredible. For anyone's audience. So well done on that.
Thank
Um,
you.
tell me about world builders as well, because just in the course of digging into your background a little bit, I came across the World Builders website. So what's all that about?
Yeah, World Builders is the name of the newsletter. I view it as a way to explore storytelling, both what I'm doing with clients and what I'm doing with writing fiction. I have a fantasy novel that'll come out here in a couple months that I'm really excited about. So the newsletter currently slants more towards that just because it's what's on my brain at all times. But I think, and I know you've written some fiction too, so I'm curious to hear your take. I think that the fundamentals of writing fiction are much more applicable to other aspects of writing and storytelling than people give them credit for, especially folks who have never written fiction themselves. They
Mm.
kind of write it off as this esoteric thing that you're just like making shit up and you gotta, all that. And it's in a way, I think fiction requires you to be more precise with your storytelling because if anything throws the reader out of the story, then they're gone. Like
Mm.
they're going to be, yeah, they'll accept your magic and your dragons and all this, but the minute there's like a logic gap in the story, they're gone. And
Mm.
I think that idea applies to so much writing, whether it's newsletters or whatever as well. But yeah, really focused on the fiction stuff right now.
Mm. I was going to ask about this later in the conversation, but tell me about your novel then that's coming out in a couple of months. So I think it's called The Pendulum Swings. Is that right?
Yeah, you've done your research. I the idea comes from I just generally think the world just kind of swings back and forth all the time. We see it in politics, we see it in fashion. We see like people in the US are dressing exactly like they did 25 years ago. And it's, and 10 years ago, we all dressed completely different. And it just keeps swinging back and forth. Religion works like this as well. Like a lot of I think the bigger aspects of life really just swing back and forth in this way. So I was like, all right, yeah, there's a lot of talk about technology and everything right now. And I generally think that like from a writer's perspective, like one trend that I'm seeing is the blend of fantasy and sci-fi. And that's a space that I want to play in.
Mm,
So to me, I'm like, okay, I want to take this science fantasy idea and I want to take this idea of pendulum swinging. And what's the opposite of technology? I mean, maybe we all nuke each other in the smithereens in the Stone Age. What if the opposite of technology is magic and magic comes back in and you have these two forces that really just don't like each other? And
mm,
if magic did come back, like I actually think that like the users of it would be this basically marginalized class that just, is there's not many of them, but they have this weird power that nobody understands, and how does society take advantage of them?
mm.
So that's the world, if you will. And then I think of like Paul Atreides from Dune as the main character. That's kind of the vibe I'm going for.
Nice. Do you kind of see it as part of a series or is it one-off book?
Yeah, trilogy is what I'm thinking. I have the whole thing mapped out. It might, well, balloon into four. We'll see.
Mm, nice.
Uh, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what age group is it aimed at? Is it adults or younger people?
Yeah, I'd say adult. I mean, you can definitely read it as like a teenager, but it's more adult.
Mm, nice. Um, yeah, I mean, I love the idea, and like, yeah, it's just always so cool to talk to somebody else who's writing anything to do with fantasy or science fiction, kind of blended together like that. I love that so much. What inspired you? So, what would you say would be a real inspiration in terms of a series or a book?
Um, the series that got me back into reading when I was in school, I read the first Red Rising trilogy,
Mm,
and that got me back into reading heavily. I read a ton when I was younger. Then, the typical high school, we don't read as much. I had to read the school books and hated them, et cetera, et cetera. Those are really good. Shadow's Apprentice by Brent Weeks is super good. Looking at my bookshelf. Uh, The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington, really good. And I love classics like Foundation, Count of Monte Cristo, East of Eden.
mm,
All those are phenomenal as well. Hyperion is
mm.
super good. Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe. If you're looking for a challenging lit read, anything by Gene Wolfe is phenomenal, but you're gonna read each page three times.
Yeah. I just want to touch on Hyperion actually because I bought it recently. I haven't read it yet, but it's sitting beside my bed, ready to be read at some point. What's it like? Is it something that's gonna like really blow my mind when I read it?
Yeah, so you got this basically not ragtag. They're a very accomplished group of seven on this ship, and they're going to this planet. And this isn't you'll learn all this in the first like three pages. They're going to this planet with this creature called a Shrike, and you don't actually get much on the planet. It's most of the story is the the travelers retelling their own personal stories to the group. So really, you're getting a bunch of individual stories within one, and it some people love it, and some people are weird about it. I loved it. I thought it was genius. Some of the individual stories are you'll like better than the other ones. It almost feels like you're reading a bunch of different novellas in a way,
Mm,
but it does tie together more so at the end.
nice. Yeah. Someone else who's a huge fantasy reader was telling me about Hyperion, and I came across it in a bookstore and just had to buy it.
Nice.
So you're the second person in quick succession who told me that I need to read it, so I'm excited to get to it.
Yeah.
I'm currently I'm halfway through The Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson's. novel, which is obviously colossal, or one of his novels, should I say? And I'm quite a slow reader, which is kind of weird because I'm a fast writer, but I'm a slow reader. So it takes me a long time. You mentioned about having to read the same page more than once. That tends to be me. I have to kind of go through everything really, really carefully when I read. I don't know what you're like. What stands out to you, Nathan, in a book? So whenever you read fantasy or even science fiction, what really will grab you? What makes you want to keep reading and really decide this is a book for you?
Um, I think I think I'm a character reader. I can deal with slower pacing, especially as I've read more and more the last 7, 8 years. I don't mind slower pacing. When I was just getting back into reading, I think I needed things that were faster paced, kind of like the Red Rising vibe. Uh, but now I don't mind slow, and I think there's almost more of an art to being able to go slow and still keep someone's interest.
Mm,
So I really appreciate the craft that goes into that. I read a 7 book series called The Sun Eater by a guy named Christopher Rocchio, who I think will be one of the biggest authors in the world here in the next, call it 4 or 5 years. Um, and his prose is phenomenal. And yeah, I think I learned more just reading his prose than like doing anything else I've done in the last 6, 7 months.
yeah. Yeah, I think if you want to be a writer of fiction in particular, the best way to hone your craft is just to read a lot of fiction. I think just to consume the kind of
Yeah,
stuff you're interested in. I mean, you've got C.S. Lewis right behind you there on the wall,
yeah,
which is a huge influence on me, obviously where I'm from as well. Northern
yeah.
Ireland, like it was a big influence on him. So it's nice to sort of be in this part of the world, and it's cool to see someone else reading this stuff. And
Mhm.
I also just want to quickly say I appreciate your cap collection there on the back of your door as a collector of caps myself. So that's quite cool to see.
There's a bunch on the floor too, but I have those hidden from the camera.
No worries. It's pretty cool. Nathan, tell me more about what your writing journey's been like. So I think you mentioned somewhere that I read that you queried a lot of agents. You went through the querying process and you got a lot of rejections. I've been there myself and know exactly what that feels like and what that looks like. What's your approach going forward then? So how are you taking the pendulum swings into the world?
Good question. So I wrote a book 5 years ago now. I finished it end of 2020, early 2021. So I finished it in COVID. And I took that one and queried it for a long time. And it, I mean, if anybody's done, it's a brutal process
I agree.
because it literally will take like 3 to 9 months for someone to get back to you. And one person took a year, and I was like, dude, like, why even
It's
bother?
happened to me
Just send
too.
the message. Like, you didn't need to send that. Like, it's really fine. Uh, and so the process is one, it's crazy. And the odds are really low. And I mean, it's basically like, has to be the perfect matchmaking kind of scenario. They have to enjoy your first page really a ton. They're reading like hundreds, some thousands of queries a year.
Mhm,
So I don't really blame the agents for how brutal of a process it is for authors. It's just kind of how the traditional publishing system is set up right now. And I think all the agents, do their best to find good stuff. And my first book was, I think the concept was good, but the execution, looking back at it now, could have used some work.
mhm,
So totally fine. I think one of the best things that I did for my writing was stick that one in Google Drive and let it sit and move on.
mhm,
Learn how to write on the internet, learn how to, I got really into a thing called copy work. Um, to basically just hone my writing craft, like on a line by line level. Because
mhm,
I think at this big picture, like I'm really good with like the broad narrative, but the hardest part for me is just line by line.
mhm.
So I wanted to really work on that. So if anybody else is similar, check out copy work. Really, really good. And you can just do it with your favorite books. There are guided ones and stuff, but I just pick out your favorite books and do that. But for the query process for this one, I had much better luck getting folks to read it, both because I knew people more so in the industry. And anybody who tells you that doesn't help is full of shit. Like 100% helps. Like for somebody to be able to text their agent, hey, I got a buddy who has something good or whatever, like goes a long way. Um, yeah,
Mm,
so that's very much a real thing. But also being able to say like, it sounds super pretentious, but I have this many newsletter subscribers and blah blah blah. Like helps
mm,
because these people know that to sell books is hard, and having some kind of audience, and they're specifically interested, I think, in YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, newsletter as kind of the big four of things that move the needle. Um,
mm,
so that was good. I don't really. I think for me, some of the stuff with traditional publishing is like if you're a first time author, you have basically no leverage. So I was just looking at folks and I was like, all right, like if I could have somebody's career in 3 to 5 years, who would it be? And there's this guy named Ryan Cahill who I think has done one, his books are good, so that helps a lot. You kind of have to start there. But he's built like a really seems like a really great business around this series that starts with a book called Of Blood and Fire. And it's a really interesting model because he has the main series and then he has novellas. And the novellas are for like the super fans, but he uses one novella, the first one, as essentially a lead magnet for his newsletter. You can download it for free.
mm,
And then you're on his newsletter and you get all his updates. And I'm pretty sure he's grown to like tens of thousands of subscribers who are specifically interested in his books
mm,
through that. And that's super valuable. Um, and now he's got a book deal with this place called I think it's the Broken Binding.
mm,
But they're really good. They do good stuff, and you just have a lot more leverage if you kind of view the market as a gatekeeper. And I'm comfortable with marketing and all that, so
mm,
happy to go the self-published route. Though I really think names are important, and I think self-published is a bad name.
mm,
uh, the more I've done it because there's a lot that goes into it, and you're doing it. It's self-funded, but you're not publishing by yourself because you
mm.
still hire an editor, hire a cover designer. You don't have to do those things, but a lot of people do.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a stigma around it a little bit. Self-publishing is like the fallback for people who aren't traditionally published, but I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's just a alternative route now.
Yeah,
Um, how
I am
Go
worried
ahead.
that I am worried that AI will hurt self-published more than it'll hurt traditionally published because I think people will assume that trad publishers have these like fancy AI screeners and blah blah blah. And like frankly they don't.
Mm,
But I think people will think they do. Um and like we're I mean you're already kind of seeing it. Like people if you can crank out 8 books a month with Claude, yeah, they might not be great, but do they have to be great? Like it's an interesting
quantity over
question.
quality. Yeah.
Right. So it's an interesting question. So I think we'll see the kind of bifurcation, if you will, of self-publishing, where you have folks like Ryan, who I was talking about, who it's like, yeah, he publishes fast, but it's super high quality, and you can
Mm,
tell that he just puts a lot into it. And then I think you'll have other folks who just crank like the quantity play.
mm,
Um, I think I actually think a lot of people do the quantity play, and whether they talk about using AI or not, they won't talk about it, but they still do it.
mhm.
And I think that will be just super interesting. So doubling down on just make the best book possible, and good things will happen. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, awesome. I think eventually society's just going to kind of people are just going to decide either I'm okay with AI and what AI creates, and I'm just happy to consume that. And some people will
Hmm.
just think I'm not happy with it. I want stuff from real creators and real writers, and that's just going to kind of be the way it goes.
Yeah,
Eventually, I think people will buy and read AI generated books and won't really care, and other people will
I think
just
we probably already are at
probably already
that,
are. Yeah, let's
which I
face it.
don't like, but oh well.
Yeah. How do you see you said you're okay with marketing, so how do you kind of envisage marketing your book whenever it comes out and beforehand as well?
Really good question. One, I think it's hard. Like everybody I've talked to just says it's really difficult to market and sell a book.
Mm,
So I think just acknowledging that, like, it's not going to be easy. I'm sitting here talking about it before it comes out. Like, if you ask me 3 months after it comes out, I have a different answer. My
mm,
plan is basically build up a wait list via email. So somebody signs up for it. And this is one of my problems with Substack is you can't just be like, person clicked this link, add them to this segment. So it makes it
mm,
harder to market this kind of thing. So I'll probably start using Kit or Beehive here shortly for that and just use Substack for growth. But yeah, that's basically it. Like build out as beta wait list as possible and talk
mm.
about it on all the social channels.
Yeah.
I don't, that, yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. And, I think those are probably the most needle moving things. And
Mm,
so that's what I'll focus on. And the other thing I believe is like the best marketing for book one is book two.
yeah.
So got to make book two good.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, that is. Actually was talking to someone about that the other day about how
Oh, really?
the best way you can drive the book sales of the books you've already got published are to just write more books and just keep going as much as you can. How do you feel, Nathan? During the times when you can't write. So I'm just interested to see what another creative person says about this. So do you feel like if life gets too busy and you kind of can't sit down and write every day or write regularly, does that have like a negative impact on you? Do you feel like something's not right about your, this is just a random question by the way I'm asking off the cuff. Do you feel like something is incomplete about your week or about your day if you're not able to actually be creative and put words onto a page?
100%.
Mm,
Uh, this is, uh, I recently decided to like actively try to grow my writing agency. Just for a while, I just kind of treated it like, okay, I'll replace my income with it and it's fine. And now I'm like actively growing it. So it's taking a lot more time. And how do you build out a team and your client services really, really well? And it's almost less about the writing than more about this quality of the overarching service being delivered. Um, so that has taken a lot of time. So I've honestly, the newsletter more than anything has been what has kind of been less consistent than I usually am.
mm,
But the writing of the fiction has stayed consistent, which is nice. Um, yeah,
mm,
but I've kind of just had to pick between the two. I find that I can do two things really well, but if I try to do three things at once, then I do all three at a
yeah.
rate, and that's not great for anybody. So I've just
Yeah.
been focusing on the two.
Fair enough. What is your fiction writing process like? Like, do you write at the same time every day? Do you write in the same place? What's your style?
I have a coffee shop nearby where I live that I like to go to write,
Mm,
and I try to write for like 2.5 to 3 hours every day.
mm,
Usually in the morning, but sometimes it has to be in the evening. Um,
nice.
I try to do it first thing in the morning. I'm either doing that or playing basketball.
Fair enough. Brilliant. Yeah, I think the morning is such a good time for creative people in particular because your brain's just ready to go and ready to start doing things, which is awesome.
Yeah. I
Um,
do have a unfortunate tendency to think really well in the evening at night, and I'll just like sometimes I'll be up till like 2:30 in the morning just because I feel like everything's going well. And then the next day I'm like, whoa, that was yeah.
you're feeling the next day. Nathan, what's a common from a writer's perspective, what's a common storytelling mistake that you see writers make, even on Substack when they're writing blog posts and things like that? What's a common mistake if someone's injecting story into their writing? What do you
Uh,
see them go wrong?
I'll give you one that I see in myself.
Mm,
So I'm working on so with the fiction I'm working on two things heavily right now. First is the first act of book one. is probably the most important act in the entire series because if you can get somebody through the first, like, call it 20% of your book, like, and they're enjoying it, they're probably gonna finish the book.
Mm,
And I'm also working on the first act of book two, which is drafting instead of editing.
mm,
And I see this in my newsletters as well. So when I was working on book two, I wrote about 20,000 words, and I realized that I needed to get rid of about the first 7,000, which was about three chapters, and just start with what it was chapter four.
mm,
Uh, and I wouldn't have known that until I wrote all of it. But once I made that decision, it was really clear that the first few were a little fluffy. And I
mm,
find that in my newsletters too. I almost always end up just chopping the first 5 to 10%. So I think people can get into the meat of it quicker. Like readers don't need as much setup as we think they do.
mm,
They can handle just being thrown into the deep end. And I think there's something to that with stories specifically, because my tendency, and I see this in other folks, is to want to set things up and want to make sure everybody's comfortable and understands and blah, blah, blah. And that just leads to a reader being bored.
mm.
And I think that's true in fiction, newsletters, whatever.
Yeah. One thing I love about Brandon Sanderson's stuff, and again, I'm relatively new to his world
Oh, have
building.
you read like Mistborn and all that?
No, the Way of Kings is my first ever
Okay.
introduction to it,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna read Mistborn.
You started with the chonker.
Yeah, I really did.
Yeah.
What I love about what he does is he doesn't really set things up. He just kind of like throws you into the world and just talks about stuff,
Yeah.
as if you should already know what it is, and then it
Yeah.
kind of like gradually builds it out as he goes along. So I think that's why there's so many times you have to go back and like read a page again and be like, did I miss something about what he set up here?
Yeah.
But he didn't. He just
Yeah.
went straight in with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love whenever writers just like, drop in the middle of the story and then you have to figure out what happens next for yourself in
Yeah.
some respects and piece it together a
Mhm.
little bit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Yeah. I think we have a tendency to underestimate the intelligence of the reader.
mm,
So in my head, I'm just like, all right, I'm writing for a smart, capable person. They don't need me to hold their hand through everything. And that's super helpful.
mm. Does that apply equally to fiction and to nonfiction?
Yeah,
Mm,
I think so.
yeah. Whenever you write a post on Substack, for instance, do you have like a kind of format that you would use, or is it purely just whatever comes out of your head onto the page? That's just the way it's going to be. Tell me what does it
A
look
lot
like
of
for you?
people will get mad at me for this, but yeah, I don't really have a template or anything, and it's just literally like, so the one I'm working on recently, that I'm hoping to get out this week or this weekend, is like what makes a bad story. I
Mm,
have this idea that um, like as I'm finishing the edits of book one, I find it's been it it's been almost more helpful to think about, okay, what is a bad story and how do I avoid all those mistakes? And
mm,
if I avoid making a bad story, then by default it'll be a good story.
mm,
And I think the two biggest ones are being confusing, but not confusing in like a, oh, that's a new word, I don't know what it means, but being confusing in a, the character wouldn't do that. That wasn't a logical decision, and they seem like a logical person. Like that's
mm,
confusing that you want to avoid. And you want to avoid being boring. Boring of all sorts is pretty bad in any story.
mm,
Like even the books that are slow, they're slow and good are not boring. I think that's probably a harder one to pull off.
mm,
But I'm really just like, okay, where could people maybe get confused, and where could they get bored, and how do I fix those sections?
mm.
So the newsletter is about that, like the makings of a bad story.
Nice. Brilliant.
And there's no like template to it. It's just me thinking my thoughts.
Yeah. Awesome. I'll check that out whenever it comes out for sure. Um, I wanted to ask as well just about your world building process for your book and for your future books as well. How do you keep track of, and this is from one writer who's trying to world build to another. How
Oh,
do you keep
okay, cool.
yeah, how do you keep track of everything? So whenever you're trying to like explain like the magic systems and the
Yeah.
map and all that sort of thing, do you have like like a show Bible kind of thing where all the information goes into, or what does your process look like?
Pretty much. Uh, I have a couple journals that I'll just scribble anything in,
Mm,
and then I have a massive Word document. I actually just straight up stole Sanderson's process and tweaked it a little bit and used that, and I think that's helpful.
mm.
And then the editor that I'm working with, he's really awesome, but he and basically has encouraged me like draft one, don't worry about world building, just plot and character. And then in your edits, like that's when you can very intentionally layer on the world building.
Okay.
Like, oh, instead of a glass of red wine, it's a glass of this specific vintage from this area of the world. Like that kind of small detail that just adds layer to it. He's like, don't worry about it in draft one. We'll add all that kind of stuff in draft two and three.
Mm.
And I thought that was just very practical advice. That saved me a good amount of headache.
That is really good advice. I'm gonna steal that as well. Um, Nathan, what are you in terms of the pendulum swings? What are you most excited about in terms of when it comes out? So, is there a particular chapter or a particular scene that you cannot wait for your readers to get to?
I think the ending is one of the best things I've ever written.
Mm.
I wish I wish the beginning was one of the best things I've ever written. But the yeah, I'm really happy with how the end of the story turned out. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think I think it pays off a lot of what is promised early in the story, um, with some twists, and I think it pulls them off well.
Nice. Um, I probably kind of similar. I look back on my first book and I think it sticks the landing really well, but I wish it was better at the start. The first like
So
sort of couple of chapters.
okay, let me flip the table. When did you put that out?
It came out in 2023. I think I wrote it in
Nice.
2020 and it came out in 2023.
Okay, cool. And is the one you're working on currently sequel or completely different?
So the one I'm working on now is an adult horror novel. I've written a
Oh, cool.
couple already, and I also write then like young adult fantasy. So there's a big swing
Hmm.
between the two.
Yeah, yeah, very
Um,
different.
yeah. So basically, once I finish the adult horror novel I'm writing now, I'm going to go in to write the third in my fantasy
Cool.
books. So I'm excited for that.
So you've written the second one?
Yep, that's out there.
Is it and it's out as well. So
Mhm.
first and second are out,
Yep.
and you're working on the horror novel that's separate, and then the third. Will the third be is it a trilogy?
Yeah, it's going to be at least a trilogy. I'm hoping to maybe go beyond
Cool.
that potentially.
Cool.
I love the idea of building out something more expansive and having novellas and short stories and all around it too. So
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
So what would you tell someone who is about to release a their first novel in, 2, 3 months? What would you tell them?
I would say give away a lot of copies of it in advance to people,
Okay.
and even if there's digital copies
Cool.
on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
That was hugely beneficial to me in terms of getting reviews and getting a bit of early chatter around my books.
Sure.
So if you can just spend a bit of time on the platforms, gather as many people who you see creating content on those platforms as possible, give them a free copy in exchange for an honest review. And it's highly likely that if they like it, and they probably will, they'll create content around it. They'll make videos, they'll talk about it, and then other people will see it then too.
Nice.
So yeah, that was really, really beneficial for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I see that. Do you do Instagram and TikTok and stuff for your books, or are you mainly Substack?
It's mainly Substack. I am on TikTok and Instagram and things. I don't use it an awful lot myself. I tend to just share other people's stuff if they talk about my books.
Sure.
I wish I could do it more, but I'm much more comfortable writing, or you know what I mean, or
No,
talking to somebody else.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, I'd be interested to see how you do it. Actually, I'm gonna be keeping an eye on what you do when your book comes out to see what approaches you take and stuff and how you find the journey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm interested in that too. We'll see.
Brilliant. A couple more questions, Nathan, then I'll let you go. So one thing I asked you in advance, which I ask everybody is, have you got any favorite TV shows or movies? Because I just love TV shows and movies alongside books as well. And you said you're not really a big TV show or movie kind of guy, but you picked a few which were great choices. So you said The Dark Knight or the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and Drive to Survive. Tell me about uh, why did you pick those? So why did those immediately jump to mind?
I I think that The Dark Knight for me was my favorite movie, like in late middle school, high school. So that's just always stuck with me. I love the opening scene with the Joker and the heist and how you,
Mhm.
like literally the first scene in the movie is like the from the back looking at the Joker with the or I don't know if it's the Joker. Yeah, it's the Joker with the mask,
Yep.
and then you have that whole bank heist, and it's I think one of the best movie intros of all time.
Mhm.
That and I would argue Up of all things are the two I think best intros.
Okay.
Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson did a great job adapting the books. The extended edition, even the regular editions they're so good.
Mm.
Drive to Survive, it's F1's a thing that my wife and I do together, so that's fun.
Nice.
I'm a big sports junkie, played pretty much everything growing up. Um, so
Mm.
anything sports, documentaries, kind of stuff, I really enjoy as well.
Yeah, my wife is increasingly getting into Formula One.
Oh,
So she likes it more than me. I do like it, but she was like really into it and really follows it closely and stuff like that. So I'll watch it if it's on when she's there. But yeah,
who's her driver?
oh, it's what's he called? He's a young Italian guy. Is he the Ferrari driver?
Oh, is it Antonelli?
Yes, she really likes
Yeah,
him. Yeah, she's a big fan of him.
he's doing super well this year. Yeah,
Yeah, she's a huge fan of his.
Bristol.
I used to watch it whenever I was young. My dad and I would watch it, and then I just kind of moved away from it at some point, and then I'm starting to come back now. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, no, it's awesome. And really quick as well, you also mentioned you love 2000s comedies. So you said The Hangover, Blades of Glory,
yeah,
Talladega Nights, Wedding Crashers, great choices. I love those as well. I think Blades of Glory in particular because for some reason I've seen it so many times, and one of the characters he's called Jimmy McElroy, I think. So like
yeah,
I sort of
yeah.
identify with him in
Oh
that
yeah.
sense. But yeah, no, great choice. Again, what is it about those movies you love?
I don't know. I feel like the run that comedies went on from like 2005 to like 2012 just like needs to be studied because it's just banger after banger. They're so good.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, they're just hilarious. I don't really know. I'm not like I don't know anything about comedies, so technically I can't break them down at all. But they're hilarious.
They are. I love them so much. I really do think that there was like a kind of golden age of comedy around that time in TV as well. And
Yeah,
the exact time you mentioned, it just seemed to be there was a point you could turn on the TV and there would just be amazing comedy after amazing comedy, just on one after the other. And it hasn't really been replicated since. It hasn't ever
yeah,
been like that again. So
yeah.
something really special was happening at that point. Um, Nathan, couple more questions. Any big plans for the future? So obviously your book's coming out very soon. That's really exciting. Where do you kind of see things going for yourself in the next maybe 12 months or so?
Yeah, I think it's get book one out, and I have a lot of I think fear over actually putting the book out. So that's like an interesting thing for just me to work through.
Mm.
And then from there, I have a novella that I've written that I need to do probably a round of edits on, and then the cover and all that good stuff. But get that one out hopefully 6 months after the first book.
Mm.
And then I'm working on, I have a full outline for book two. It's like the most extensive outline I've ever done. It's like 8,000 words.
Well,
And then I've started the draft of the first act, and I'm working through that. Like I said, cut out like 6 or 7,000 words, so that's always fun. But hey, nothing to do. And so yeah, just for the writing stuff, work through those. And I do want to be more intentional with the newsletter because when I started it, probably for the first 3 years, I was really intentional with it. And just like doing it every week and all this. And not, I wouldn't say well, actually, I've kind of gotten distracted by writing the fiction, but like the writing online stuff is really valuable. And I think there can be a lot of synergies there. So to really, tap back into and just give it the effort that it takes and that it deserves to do it well.
Mm.
Um, so start doing that more so as well.
Nice. Is the novella that you're working on, is that part of the same series or is it something different? It is, yeah. Nice. Brilliant. That's really cool. And yeah, I wish you all the best with that because it's a really exciting time for you, for sure. Last question, and I ask this to everyone who's on the podcast. If you had one final like golden nugget of advice for anyone who wants to write for a living, in one sentence or a couple of sentences, what would you say?
I think if you really want to, I think it depends because uh, there's it's actually Sanderson who says like if you want to write books specifically for a living, like the best thing for your day job is to have it not be related to writing. And I
Mm,
think there is some truth to that. Like I like kind of the tension that I talked about between the newsletter and the books and stuff. So you just that's kind of a know yourself thing. But if you're not wanting to write books, and I know wanting to write books is more niche than wanting to make a living through writing, so I'll just address making a living through writing.
mm,
I think it's easy to see folks with huge online audiences and be like, oh, I want to do that. I think the quickest way to make money from it is actually services. It's a little backwards, but I was concerned when Claude got decent at writing that like all writing jobs were just going to vanish, but that's like not really the case at all.
mm,
Um, so I would say that like there's definitely demand for really good writing, whether it's script writing for YouTube, whether it's content writing for newsletters, for Twitter, for LinkedIn, for all these for brands. Um, even places like a lot of tech companies are really like going hard on content, so they're hiring writers. Um, I think services is the best way to like really, I would say like replace your income, and
mm,
you just need a couple clients. I say just, it's obviously if you're starting at zero, it's hard to get a couple clients, but you can. Um, I would, price it if you've never done this type of work before, price it lower at the start, but don't like undersell yourself. Like charge a couple $1,000s a month,
mm,
and then I would definitely do monthly. Try not to do one-off projects. If you can get folks to pay quarterly, that's obviously better. And a lot of companies are used to paying quarterly,
mm,
um, or even annually, but I charge quarterly, and that works well. And just like frankly raise your prices more than you think you should. Because if you can do one client at 7,000 a month, to me that's better than two clients at 3,500
yeah.
because you can just deliver a better service to that person. And if you can stack three of those clients, then you're at a really good place. And then you can invest in, okay, hey, how should I think about a newsletter? How should I think about digital products? How should I think about all this other stuff? And I think that other stuff is the attractive stuff often, but the services is what you can like monetize quickly.
Mm. Yeah, I was watching something yesterday. A guy was talking about this exact same sort of thing, and he said that really, in terms of your audience, the top sort of like 3, 4, 5% of your audience are the ones who are gonna account for 80, 90% of your actual revenue most of the time. So your offer really should be for them. It should match their expectations and their needs more than anything else. And you mentioned about YouTube scripts as well. Um, this is a real like bugbear of mine because I've really noticed that so many YouTube videos now have terrible AI written scripts and you can
Dude,
hear it.
yes. I hear it in podcasts of all places too, and
Yes.
even in like in an ad. Like I was watching the NBA like the Western Conference semis, and one of the ads it's like it's not X, it's Y, and I was like, bro, are we really using ChatGPT of all things to write ads for national television? Like I know how much you paid to get this placement on here, these 30 seconds, and this is what we're doing,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. I think whenever you see it once, you can see it everywhere and you can hear it and it just yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, that's great advice. I think the advice about charging what you're worth and raising your prices is so important. People are so scared to do that. So it's great that you're
One
advising that.
one thing on that that I've been thinking about recently is if people in sales will talk about your close rate. I don't think you want your close rate to be 100%. Like if you're closing every client you're talking to, you are not pricing yourself properly.
Mm,
Like I think you should be closing and it depends on your like lead flow and all that. But and it depends like where you're at. Like if you have no clients and you're just trying to get your first one, okay, that's different. But if you've closed a couple of clients, like you probably don't want your close rate to be 100%. You probably want it to be closer to 60 or so.
mm.
Um, so like raise your prices and just treat it like an experiment. And people will probably say yes more than you think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's been my experience as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Nathan, thank you so much. It's really cool to chat to you. So good to have this conversation. So useful for anyone who is writing a book or is building a writing-based business. So really appreciate this, and I very much wish you all the best with the pendulum swings when it comes out. I'll definitely grab a copy whenever it's there. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'll see you soon.